All right. Got my radio voice going because I'm going to try a little radio interview here. This is Chris Barnes, and I have Scott Leppel, owner of Doorstep Dallas, on the line. And Scott has been kind enough to be my first interview victim. And the idea here is that we're going to be going through 1, 2, 3 topics for every session. Try to keep these interviews to about 10 minutes or so it's not too overwhelming for anyone. But really the key is that there are a lot of people out there, Scott included, who have great ideas, who are doing some really great things within the company. And sometimes it's tough to get those ideas to everyone. So we're going to start a series of interviews to talk about different subjects and just really kind of just get as much education and communication to everyone as possible. So with that said, I got Scott on here, and we're going to be talking today about catering clients and also Pex Cards. And we're going to start with catering clients, because Scott in particular has seen an average ticket that's been going up and up recently, and I know a lot of focus on catering. And so with that said, Scott, I'm going to kind of throw it to you, if you wouldn't mind just kind of touching on the importance of catering in your business.
Yeah, it's huge. As your check average goes up, your incremental profit goes up, and so you're doing the same work, you've got the same amount of people in the office, but you're making more money.
Absolutely.
It also is great with regards to drivers, because when your drivers start getting $30, $40, $50, $60, $70, $80 tips, it changes their whole perception of the value of their job.
Yep, I totally agree with that. You know, one thing that I always said in my time in Gainesville, where I had a pretty stable driver crew, was the catering, just like you said, was the key. The fact that there were those core of the top drivers that almost always were able to get pretty good tips, and they really saw the vision. They almost became the spokespeople to all the newer drivers of why it really paid to stick around.
Exactly.
Scott, can you kind of comment on what you do to target catering clients? Are there specific marketing materials, or is it walking in the door, cold calling? Like how is it that you're finding these clients?
Really a variety of things. One is talking to our drivers that have worked for other companies, because now they're with you and they want to make money, and so if they know that there was a big client that they were servicing with their old company, they're usually more than happy to provide you a lead. And then other things, if you can investigate the biggest companies in your market. So if you're looking in any kind of directories, and try to find the companies that have the biggest square footage of offices, because chances are they have people that they're going to need to feed, whether it's for an individual meeting or a group meeting, or whatever they've got going on. We've had a lot of success this year with tax and accounting firms. So knowing the calendar, from January until April 15th, which is today, those accounting firms are ordering huge. Public relations, marketing companies, law firms, they're always spending money as well.
And do you find yourself just literally walking in the door to introduce yourself, or are you making phone calls, sending materials through the mail? Like, what's sort of been your best technique?
Calling them first. So what we will do is, call them up and introduce ourselves, and like, let's say if it was a driver lead, I'll say, I understand you guys might order food to be delivered in on occasion, and I was just hoping to introduce my business to you and let you see the portfolio of restaurants that we have available for you. And then, go ahead.
No, so that's great, yeah.
Yeah, and then what we do is we have an email that we've crafted that basically captures a lot of the stuff that's off the Sprytech website that a guest could see, that talks about how to order, opening a house account, things of that nature. And then we also will put an attachment in where we look at their address, and then we'll say, here's all of the restaurants that you could order from. So we don't require them to go to the website before they can see what they have available. But then we will include a link. And then we have a packet that we will drop off when we set up a formal meeting, and it's got information about house accounts, got some promotional materials. When we go in for the face-to-face, we will bring a laptop, we'll have everything set up, we'll have their address already keyed in, and we'll basically just teach them how to do group orders and how to use our software.
Wow, that's phenomenal. When you go back to the original phone call, is there a particular type of employee that you're asking for, or are you speaking to whoever answers the phone? Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, so when I speak with the receptionist, believe it or not, they're usually more than helpful because they like getting food delivered. So I'll introduce myself to the receptionist, and I'll just say I'm not sure who I should be asking for if I don't have a specific contact. But I'll say, if you guys order food in, we'd love to introduce our business to you, and who would you recommend that I speak with?
Okay, great. And as far as that email that you send, I'm going to ask you if it's okay if you can send that to me later, because I'd love to just take a look at that and have that available. And as far as the packet, is that more like you have a folder and you've just included different materials, or did you have something like one specific piece made?
It's got basically it's a red folder like we would use to drop it off to restaurants and things, and it's got some of my marketing materials. If it's got any stuff showing restaurants, coupons, whatever the case may be, and then like I said, it's got information on how to set up a house account and how to order, how to do group orders, that kind of stuff.
Great. So really something almost anybody could put together from materials in their office, and it sounds like the other information you just got it straight from the website.
Exactly. The only thing that I create is the restaurant list specific to the company that we're talking to. Everything else I copied from the SpryTech website.
Great. I love that idea. I mean, it gives them something tangible and the restaurant list right at their fingertips. And then as far as the actual catering order itself, any advice in regard to the presentation, any additional materials that you have available for them to order, any kind of follow-up, anything like that?
You're talking about in execution, doing the delivery?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, best advice on this stuff is, you've got to be out in front of it. When we come in every day, we're aggressively looking at, what we've got for our corporate orders. To give you some kind of numbers as far as where our branch has changed, I would say 4 months ago, we might do, let's say, $750 in food sales in our first hour, where now we could do between $2,000 to $3,000. And so, you got to come in really prepared to get these things sent over to restaurants quickly, get them confirmed, because you're going to be tipping over restaurants with big orders. You've got to make sure that you've got your schedule set up so that you've got qualified drivers that are able to execute these things and that know how to verify the food, know how to communicate with the guest, know that they're not just going to drop it off and run, that they're going to stick around, that they're going to help the client set up the food, that they're going to verify it with the guest. Communication's critical, so when you send these big orders to the restaurants, if they're out of anything, if there's any issues, you've got to be right back in contact with that client so that they're not tipped over. Early is bad as late sometimes, so if the guests put down an 11:45 delivery time, they don't want the food at 11:15 because it's a 12 o'clock meeting. So you just got to be over-prepared and not take anything for granted.
I think that's great advice, and that's really true about the early. I mean, you're 100% right there, because you get there early, that's almost going to guarantee the food's cold, even if it, kind of the same as it being late. And then as far as following up, do you guys do any kind of follow-up after the order?
No, quite honestly, that's an opportunity for us.
Okay, great. Well, there you go. Well, I think that that kind of wraps up catering. But just to kind of touch on it, Scott, you mentioned there the numbers going from something like $700 in the first hour to really 2,000 to 3,000. That's kind of been my theory all along, that if you have a thriving catering business, you can almost guarantee that you're going to have a successful day as you're walking in the doors in the morning.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for that information. I wanted to go over to our second topic, which was Pex Cards. And the reason that I'm focusing on this is, honestly, this is not a subject I'm too well versed in. I just never used Pex Cards. When I was more and more branches are using it, I know more and more of our competitors are using it, so it's very important that even if you haven't moved forward. This one, I kind of wanted to go to a more, if you wouldn't mind just telling us how you're actually using them on a per order basis versus Pex Cards. And I would say you right now have about, what, at least 50 Pex Card restaurants on your website?
Probably like 150.
Whew, there you go. So you guys have fully embraced this system.
Correct. And really, to kind of bring it back to square one, why did we do Pex Cards? And it's to remain competitive. You know, Pex Cards are kind of a natural evil of the business right now. If you're able to build a portfolio of restaurants, that you've got 300 restaurants, all different cuisines, you've got branded restaurants like Cheesecake Factory or Panera Bread, or P.F. Chang's, or ones that we've traditionally not been able to sign up, then you might not need Pex Cards. But to remain competitive, what I've found in my experience, the guests, when they go to your site, they want to see variety, and that also plays a huge role with the catering. As we built our portfolio, our catering orders grew and grew and grew. So it's something that it's a portfolio of restaurants that the guests can see everything that they want. The good news is you can go from 0 restaurants to 150 in 4 months. Bad news is, though, you've got to really be on top of them on the finances. You're typically not going to get the commissions that you would have with a restaurant. So you've got to be aware of how that's impacting, your profitability. You've also got to really be on top of keeping track of things on a daily basis, because your restaurant's not going to tell you if they change their menu. And things can quickly get out of control as you have more restaurants, and if the pricing is not necessarily putting it into your point of sale at that point, so you don't have the total.
Gotcha. And I'm going to stop for a second because I think we just reconnected. So
Okay.
with handing the driver the Pex card, the easy part is just transferring the money so that the card's available for them when they're there. But you were saying that some challenges include just the timeliness of it and
Right.
avoiding some embarrassment of them having a declined card while standing in line.
Right. A best practice that we've come up with regards to loading the cards, you don't want to put money on the cards too early for the driver, because if you have to pull the order from them for whatever reason, now you've got money on there that didn't need to be on there. Every day you can take it off, or you can take it off instantaneously, but it's in the heat of the battle, it's not necessarily easy. So you want to kind of wait until the driver gets to the restaurant to load the funds. It's a challenge when you're calling in orders, especially if it's a big order, to get the total from the restaurant so that you know how much to put on the card. So what we do is when we are calling in the order to the restaurant, we will hit the print fax button, and this will show you the actual pricing of the restaurant. So if you do have an upcharge in there, it's showing you the restaurant pricing. And so now you should have an idea of what the total should be to put on that driver's card. And so then that's the number that we'll try to put on there before the driver gets there. And that way as well, if the card gets declined because of insufficient funds, well, now you can ask the question, okay, well, the order was supposed to cost $30. Why did it cost $35? Was there a pricing update? Did the restaurant, instead of ringing a lunch salad, ring in a dinner salad? Were there options that you didn't know the pricing for scallops on the add-on? And so it'll help you kind of do some investigation to find out why your pricing is off. So the print fax works good to help in that.
Do you find that your restaurants know what's going on, care what's going on? Like, what kind of transparency are you running into?
Great question. So when we first started, I was calling all of the restaurants first to introduce ourselves and say, hey, we're just a to-go customer. We're excited to bring you some more sales. And unfortunately, that slowed everything down. Because the whole idea is to get restaurants up, get them loaded, start bringing in sales right away. And so when you call them and ask for permission, so to speak, now then they're going to talk to their boss or their area director, and now you're back in square one, waiting 3 months to load a restaurant that you could have been bringing in sales. So after trial and error, we just load them up and we just start sending them orders, and we're just a to-go customer, and that's how we present our business to them. And most of them like it. Some of them, have some questions, what's going on, but at the end of the day, I mean, you're bringing them incremental sales that they wouldn't have received. The only drawback on this is because it's not a partnered restaurant where they understand the arrangement up front and that their employees aren't going to get tipped. Where when you're just doing straight Pexes, that's definitely something to be aware of, because that person that's ringing in the order is expecting a tip because they don't know that it's a partnered restaurant or, who you are. So that's definitely something to be aware of.
Have you found yourself having to reach into your pocket at all for that, or how have you handled that so far?
It's something that's on the whiteboard as far as something that we're working on. For our larger catering orders, the drivers have just kind of been taken upon themselves to tip the to-go people because they understand the importance. But we're trying to come up with a way that we can take care of some of the restaurant personnel, but also realize you're not getting the same commissions that you typically would have in the past, and there's only so much burden you can pass on to the guest.
Well, that makes sense. And Scott, I think per usual when we talk, we went over my 10-minute mark a little bit, but this was great. I think this was really informative. I mean, looking at both of these things, just so important. I think catering is just such a centerpiece to efficiency of our business, in that you can do a lot less orders potentially than another branch, but make more money because you're just making so much more profit on a per order basis, and really building loyal clientele. And so, I mean, catering just cannot be forgotten. And then these Pex cards, I mean, it's something new, and it's something that every branch has to decide whether it fits for them. But I think, Scott, as you kind of touched in the beginning, you may think it doesn't fit for you, but if your competitor does, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. And so everybody really needs to be looking at it very seriously. So, Scott, I really appreciate the time that you put into talking about both these items.
No problem.
Okay, great.